Hello, my name is David. This video is a making of covering my recent animated short film, Friendly Shadow. This video will cover my artwork, the themes, the story, the trials and errors, and my general creative process behind this short film, from the ground up. This project took me 10 months from start to finish. There's a lot to cover, and I'm very, very proud of it. Please enjoy. This short film is the 6th film in the Autodale animated series. Autodale is a dystopian society that runs on an everlasting cycle. It's a big ol' self-sustaining, never-changing machine. Its citizens are bred to be as productive as possible, reproduce, raise replacements, and then be disposed of. Everything beyond the town seems to be dead, dangerous, or aimless. It's a wasteland full of dangerous monsters and odd, unnatural anomalies. To protect themselves from this, there is a large wall built around the city. Autodale uses this wall to keep the monsters out, as much as it uses this wall to keep its citizens in. But, more and more frequently as of late, creatures seem to be bleeding through. The citizens of Autodale are starting to share whispers and concerns of monsters inside the safety of their immoral city. The people of Autodale are brainwashed from a very young age to believe that their town is a utopia. It is safe, they are happy, and nothing can go wrong. Most of Autodale's citizens, even when marching to their early graves, do it willingly and with a sense of pride and accomplishment. Thank you, Joe. Doubts among the citizens of the city's safety are very, very dangerous.
Remember, citizens, Autodale is our home, Autodale is protected, and Autodale is safe.
Greetings, Friendly Shadow. Do try to stay out of trouble this time. Save it. Let me in. Saving it. Talkative as ever, Shadow. Letting you in. The biggest thing that separates this film from the rest of the series, I feel, is that it's from the perspective of a character who doesn't agree with Autodale's dystopian system, and doesn't see the city as some kind of utopia. The rest of the films are from the deluded perspectives of either impressionable children or brainwashed adults. The Friendly Shadow is different. He doesn't like the handyman, he disagrees with a lot of what Autodale does, and he straight up disobeys Hive's orders. We don't see a whole lot of resistance from anyone in any of the previous films, and that was the point. But here I wanted to create something different. The Friendly Shadow is a tool used by Autodale to handle delicate and dangerous situations that the handymen prove incapable of handling themselves. He's part detective, part bounty hunter, and part gunslinger. His ridiculous and pulpy image isn't without reason though. To justify his escapades to the public, Autodale have based cartoons, action figures, comic books, films, radio dramas, everything around his adventures. They have built a persona around this character, as they have with the handyman, for the public to better accept. The Friendly Shadow, in reality, is nothing like his depiction by Autodale's media, and his adventures rarely go the way Autodale says they do. The Friendly Shadow is half human and half machine, and actively tries to suppress the machine side of himself. He's pro-human and anti-machine, which is a sentiment likely shared by literally no one else in the city. Autodale citizens idealise machines and suppress their individuality. The Shadow is an individual. He has sympathy for the human victims of his cases and cannot stand the autonomous handyman. He is morally against a lot of Autodale's customs, and he only does what he does because he has no choice, and he genuinely wants to help people. I'm sorry. That's as far as I'm going to describe this character here, because I'm going to be uploading another behind the scenes video dedicated to the Friendly Shadow alone, as a character very soon, covering his design, his backstory, his purpose, and his morals. Those of you who are familiar with this series will no doubt recognise this drawing. I think it's in every single one of my behind the scenes videos. I created this drawing 4 years ago, and it was the beginning of all of this. It was through fleshing out the town behind this image where the world of Autodale was created, which eventually led to my animated short film Being Pretty, then No Monsters, Children's Toys, Don't Feed the Freaks, Model Citizen, and now Friendly Shadow, with a whole bunch of drawings, paintings, and sculptures in between. A colossal 4-year ongoing creative effort, and this drawing here was the start of all of it. I mention this because before Autodale was Autodale, I was originally going to very literally translate this image into an animated short film. A film about a monster in an alley that everybody shuns as it is ugly and looks dangerous. It's not welcome. But this little girl doesn't care. She, being a trusting and possibly naive little girl, empathises with the creature and offers the monster a piece of cake. What happens next, we don't know. Does it accept the cake and the two become friends, proving it's not a monster after all? Or does it attack and kill her, as its monstrous appearance would suggest? That was the original point of the drawing and the original idea I had for the animated short. This short film finally animates this scene, and with both outcomes. The little girl offers the monster in the gutter a piece of cake. Initially, it's the juvenile, the one that she has become friends with, and he is friendly. He then retreats, and to the girl's horror, what emerges is not her friend, but a far larger, more dangerous, more monstrous creature that proceeds to attract a whole bunch of attention and cause a whole lot of damage. It has been at least 4 years, and finally, this stupid painting has officially been translated to animated form. I can't begin to describe how tremendously, creatively satisfying that is. I had to create a whole bunch of new assets, 3D character models, for this film. I always have to create new assets for new films, but this ended up being more work than I expected. This short film might have the largest cast of characters I've ever had in one video. There's a father, a mother, 2 sons, 1 daughter, a friendly shadow, some handymen, 1 adult freak, 1 baby freak, miscellaneous citizens, a Robinson family cameo, and finally a hive, and a hive. That's a whole bunch of dudes. The father and the handyman are just total reuses from previous films, so no extra work there. But there were still 3 children, a mother, a shadow, a freak, a baby freak, and about 7 different pieces of Hive to design and create. And on top of that, I had to create at least 2 different versions of most of these characters because some lose arms, some get all filthy, and one particular character loses its noggin. The freaks are a very interesting part of Autodale's mythos. They are an essential part, but it's odd because they've only really appeared in 2 of the 6 Autodale films, including this one. Before this film came out, they'd only appeared once, and yet their design and their personality, their purpose, was the origin of the whole series. There have been references to them, of course, through almost all of the films. Even before they appeared, they were alluded to, but it's only in Don't Feed the Freaks and this film where they actually make physical appearances. The freaks in this film have been totally and completely remade since Don't Feed the Freaks. I took the initial 3D model and looked at my old clay sculpture and I recreated the freak from scratch. The old model and especially the rig was way too outdated to continue to use. This new and improved freak can do a whole lot more and will likely appear in a whole lot more films down the line. It's subtle, but I think it looks way more refined, with a body that looks far more correctly proportioned as a being, while still staying true to that original model. The biggest change between the two models is the mouth. The original freak model actually doesn't have a mouth. It was sculpted shut because the freaks never needed to open their jaws in Don't Feed the Freaks, they were all relatively docile. In this film though, you get to see a far more aggressive side to the freaks. They needed to bark and squawk and roar. I was somewhat worried, actually, about portraying the freaks in this way. I feel a lot of the appeal of the freaks was their unsettlingly docile and passive nature. They were blank, and you never really knew what they were thinking, which was part of the point. It was the point of the original drawing that they originated from, and it was part of the point of Don't Feed the Freaks itself. But even in that film, the narrator says that they are utterly unpredictable. Some are aggressive, some are dangerous, some are friendly, and some are passive. So it's definitely not totally out of character for one of them to do a bit of this. I do think though that knowing what these things are thinking, I'm scared, I'm angry, I'm dead, does ruin one of the freaks' major design philosophies in theory, which is the blankness and the unknowingness and the staring, but I did try to counteract that a little with this scene. A lovely wee blank-faced stare-off. What's it thinking? Is it aggressive? Is it sad? I animated it and I have no clue. The freaks we all know and love, everybody. I wanted this film to have a very particular look. Yes, all of the Autodale films sort of share a look, a grayscale, cel-shaded, stylised look. But there are a whole lot of looks that you can pull off within those limitations. Where this film differs visually from, say, Model Citizen, is that in Model Citizen, all of the shades of grey are flat. There's no light and there's no shadow. That film is supposed to look safe and soft and fake. The flat shades and the lack of any type of dramatic lighting, hand in hand with the conventional frame compositions, were supposed to mimic the flat lighting of American sitcoms, cosy family television, and even mid-1900s Hollywood musicals. There's a friendliness and there's a fakeness to it. The Friendly Shadow isn't cosy and it ain't fake. This film is visually inspired by noir films, mostly. There's a whole lot of shadow, there's a whole lot of silhouettes, a whole lot of spotlights, and a whole lot of backlighting. The film is also far more atmospheric. There's fog and there's rain. The film is damp and it's heavy. There's dirt and filth and blood, and even the lens of the camera is filthy. It has droplets of water on the lens for over half the runtime. I am very proud of the aesthetic and heavy atmosphere I managed to pull off in this film. It's one of my favourite parts about it. This short film is essentially cyborg detective cowboy versus dinosaur sewer monster, and that's a promise. It's a promise this film makes to the audience. The moment that this film starts, it makes a promise to the audience that the monster and the monster hunter will have a fight. Now, I don't do fight scenes much. I used to, but if you look at my animation filmography over the years, the moment I switch over to the more 2D, 3D, cel-shaded style is when fight scenes suddenly become far less common in my work. This is because I feel fight scenes work best with a camera that can move. And in full 3D animation, that's easy. But in 2D, I'm massively limited in how much I can move that camera. Fight scenes suddenly became far harder to pull off, a hell of a lot more effort, and a whole lot less spectacular to watch, so I tend to avoid them. For the majority of this animation, the 3D characters are animated in a mock-up low-detail 3D world. I then render a single frame of that mock-up backdrop, touch it up in Photoshop, and place that improved, now 2D image behind the character models, in addition to whatever extra 2D animated elements that are required for the final composition. For this film, that ended up being candle flickering, rainfall, droplets of water, cigar smoke, and pulsing organs. This is essentially a 2D animated film with 3D animated character models. I'd compare it to the early Resident Evil games. 2D rendered backdrops with minimal animation, 3D rendered characters. But let's get back to the fight. To solve this problem, from the moment the adult freak grabs the friendly shadow and tears him from the den, my mostly 2D animated film suddenly switches to full 3D animation, something I haven't done in maybe 4 or 5 years. For this one scene, I went back to my mock-up hallway, 3D modelled more of it, and textured it to look as close to my 2D backdrops as I could. I added some fog, some glare, and I animated the scene as I would have 4 years ago, in full 3D animation. I think it looks a little funky, if I'm honest, especially the sudden change in shooting style. The camera is mostly static up until that point, and then suddenly it's dancing about, but I don't think that's bad. I think it's a little jarring, but the scene is supposed to be jarring, it's supposed to be surprising, so I feel it works. In fact, I think the transition is kinda quirky and pretty badass. It also made possible this soft body head explosion, which is something I've never really tried before, and it's just oh so sweet. Y'all ripped out my arm, but y'all exploded my head. Important piece of concept art, that. Moment I done this, I was like, that's bloody going in. Helping me out with this film were a couple of voice actors. Kiri Quackenbush plays the girl's mother, returning to the series after appearing in Model Citizen as Mrs. Robinson. These two characters have no relation. And Adrian Cox plays Hive, returning to the series after playing the mother in No Monsters. And obviously these two characters have no relation. The handymen were played by myself as per usual, as was the friendly shadow. This short film has an original score composed by the two chaps at Controlled Noise, Rayshawn Thompson and Cameron Moody. I originally edited this film to a royalty-free soundtrack that I stitched together from random pieces I could find on the internet, which is what I've done with the rest of the Autodale series. But even early on, it became extremely apparent that this film needed an original soundtrack. The film's structure and length just did not lend itself to the usual disconnected royalty-free stuff. I think Rayshawn and Cameron did a fantastic job with this score. I feel their soundtrack has added extra depth to the storytelling, with recurring themes appearing here and there, and a far more compelling sense of dread that you just can't get with royalty-free tracks. This is music serving the storytelling, and that's just awesome. Please check them out because they deserve it. Their SoundCloud is linked in the description, and they've also uploaded the entire official soundtrack to their YouTube channel as well, which is also linked below. Hive has finally made her return. She first appeared in No Monsters, and I'll be covering what and who Hive is and the exceptional members of Autodale Society, which is what she is comprised of, in her own dedicated making-of video coming next week. Her reappearance is actually foreshadowed a little. To those familiar with the series, early in the film there's a reference to the Exceptional Girl storybook from No Monsters. On paper, this seems to correlate to the Freaks, and the Freaks alone. But as anyone who has seen No Monsters will know, the exceptional girl that this book is about is Hive. Only she isn't being chased by monsters anymore, she's chasing them. Now, I need to talk about the Hive scene because it's one of my favourite things I've created in a long time. That scene in the script was nothing. It was about 15 lines of simple, bickering dialogue and a rudimentary doodle of the friendly shadow strung up in front of a mutilated biomechanical jury deciding his punishment. That was all the idea I needed. I deliberately kept this scene almost totally blank, because I knew it was going to have to be made in the edit, with Adrian's performance being its backbone. I gave Adrian relatively vague direction for this scene. I gave her the 15 or so lines of dialogue that I had written, which were split up into 3 categories: Neutral Hive, Angry Hive and Funny Hive, and I asked her to improvise wherever she wanted. What she sent back to me was like 24 minutes, maybe 35 minutes, I can't remember, of different takes, of improvisation and of madness, which was fantastic. In the edit, I was allowed to creatively explore with all these different aspects of Hive's personality and create whatever I wanted. Adrian actually contributed to fleshing out and workshopping this character more than I could possibly mention here, and I will try to cover more of that in the dedicated Hive making of coming out next week. This scene is supposed to reveal the monstrosity that Hive is. She, or he, or it, is a biomechanical hive mind of numerous tens, maybe hundreds of exceptional human minds and bodies, male and female, tethered together with cables and organs and metal. This is what happens to the exceptional members of Autodale Society seen in No Monsters. Hive is a decision-making machine. This thing is basically running Autodale, just under the mayor and the matriarch. And in this scene, Hive is acting, as it often does, as judge, jury, and executioner. This scene was easily the most demanding out of everything. I spent 5 to 10 hours on each of these shots. The designs, the compositions of the frames, I wanted to get all of this right. This scene meant a lot to me, which is odd for a scene that was barely even written. But I think all of that work shows. I think it's fascinating to compare what Hive looked like 3 years ago in 2017 in No Monsters with what Hive looks like now in 2020. I remember mentioning in the making of for No Monsters how proud I was that this character was a combination of 2D and 3D elements, a technique I've continued to use again and again, and I used here as well. I think it's staggering how much my visuals have improved since then, and this new design, this redesign, I'm more proud of this than I ever was of the old one. This is what I was trying to draw back in 2017. I think this Hive is gorgeous. I love films, it's why I'm making them, and my biggest inspirations are art house, sci-fi and horror cinema, and this here, this whole scene, is that. It reminded me why I like film so much. This scene is weird, it's creative, it's scary, and it's funny. This scene, on a shot-for-shot basis, was technically the hardest to pull off, but I had way too much fun doing it, so it never really felt that way. From reading some of the comments and messages I get, I feel a lot of people get the impression that these short films are created by a team of people, a group of artists and animators. That's not true. With the exception of the occasional composer or the occasional extra voice actor, it's all me. That goes for the drawings, the scripts, the sketchbooks, the everything. Which means if you see an oven mitt on a woman's hand, I had to 3D model, texture and attach that oven mitt. If you see a comic book cover, I had to design, draw and 3D model that comic book. Now, this goes for all of my animated short films, but I really felt it in this one because most of them are 3 to 5 minutes long, usually taking me anywhere between 1 and 3 months to create, and this film is 4 to 5 times that length. It's nearly the length of the 5 other Autodale films combined. I have been working on this film on and off for 10 months, and whee, did it feel like that. That being said, I moan, but it was the length and the ambition of this short film that actually drew me to making it. After finishing Model Citizen, I really wanted to push myself. Model Citizen was a lot of work, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't anything I hadn't tackled before. This short film was tremendously difficult to create, all on my own, yes, but I write these things. I could make them easy for myself if I wanted to. I didn't have to give that woman an oven mitt. But the film is better because she has an oven mitt. I make these short films because I love filmmaking, but making 3 to 5 minute short films doesn't feel like making a feature film. They feel more like making music videos, as they are short and punchy with montages and a fast pace. You can't really have much back and forth between your characters in short films like that. You can barely even have characters, and your characters have no time. Films like Model Citizen, Being Pretty or No Monsters were written to be fast and punchy and possible for one man called David to make alone on his home computer between playing Halo and taking pictures of frogs. This film, The Friendly Shadow, at over 17 minutes long, kinda felt like making a film. I had room. This film has scenes that slow down, it has acts and a structure with characters, lots of characters at that, who have conflicts, motivations and who change. I have issues with this film, it's far from perfect, I don't even know if it's very good, but regardless, it was a real wonder working on something like this again. It has been way too long. As for the future of the series, the next short film I'm going to be working on, I've had a couple of ideas. I promised I was going to make 3 new Autodale animated short films in my announcement video late last year. The first 2 are out now, and the third was originally going to be a Don't Feed the Freak style film exploring the wasteland outside Autodale some more. I'm still very interested in that story and I'll continue to refine that idea. I haven't stopped drawing newer and weirder creatures, but I doubt that's going to be the next film I'm working on. To do that concept justice, it's gonna have to be another crazy, ambitious short film, and I need a break right now. I need something smaller. I also started experimenting with the idea of making a sequel to this film, following the little girl and the juvenile freak surviving in the wastes together. I feel I can give that a very sweet and very sad and very dark, again fairy tale feel, and it would work very, very, very well. And that's a possibility, but my third idea, and it's almost certainly the one I'm going to go for, is a short film about the mayor of Autodale, basically explaining what goes on in that big old penis castle. People have wanted me to explain the matriarch and how Autodale started for as long as the series has existed, and I've always responded by saying if I ever come up with a good way to tell the story, I absolutely will make that film. And I think I finally figured that out now. And after enjoying animating the Hive scene so much, I cannot wait to film a full animated short film with that level of abstract weirdness and beautiful, disgusting visuals. I'm actually very glad I've waited this long to tackle this subject matter because I think if the whole short film looked like this, instead of this, it wouldn't have been done justice. Back in 2015, I uploaded an animated short film called Parallel Chapter 1. It's not very good. Parallel wasn't my first attempt at making an animated film. I've been animating since at least 2012, but Parallel was my first successful attempt at finishing an animated film, if you exclude the Chapter 1 written in the title, that is. I am an entirely self-taught animator. I never went to school for it and I never took a class. Parallel taught me how to animate, and it took me 11 months to finish. Parallel and The Friendly Shadow share a decent amount of legitimate plot-related similarities, with a robotic authoritarian force and a girl and a monster becoming friends and drawing pictures together. But the reason I'm bringing Parallel up is because of its length. Even though the finished film is under 12 minutes long, I animated and rendered over 36 minutes of alternate and deleted scenes. Parallel was the most ambitious thing I've ever worked on in my entire life, and it's the only project I can compare The Friendly Shadow to. The Friendly Shadow on its own doesn't quite surpass Parallel in sheer work hours and effort. That might be impossible, but it's with The Friendly Shadow's addition to the Autodale series as a whole, if you include everything, Parallel versus Autodale, I think Autodale has finally surpassed it. I have created a 6-foot multi-canvas painting, regular littler paintings, big sculptures, small sculptures, hundreds of drawings, tons of scripts, pages and pages of lore, sketchbooks, 3D models, over 1,000 backdrops, over 1,000 animated and rendered shots, all the comic book covers, TV slides, storybook pages, all culminating into the animated short films themselves, over 40 minutes worth of finished animated film. Autodale has definitely surpassed Parallel, and it has become the biggest thing I've ever made, the most ambitious thing I've ever worked on. Thousands and thousands of hours over the past 4 years have gone into this series now, and I cannot understate the importance of the continued inclusion of things like that oven mitt. If you guys want to read any of my many sketchbooks I've been showing off in this video, you can. Over on my Patreon page, you can read all of it. Every sketchbook from every animation, including all previous Autodale work, in one big package. And of course, I just uploaded this full Friendly Shadow sketchbook there as well. Full, high-resolution photographs of the entire book. Please consider supporting me and giving it a cheeky read if you want. Thank you all so much for watching. I know this making of was long. I cannot believe this animated short film is finally over. Special thanks to Lizzie Lizard, Ryan Turpin, Brooke Watson, Ashley, Ninja of Orthanc, Sam Milson, George Story, Guardian of Energy, Triskelios, Jordan, Knight of Trousers, Thomas Woderick, Jose Miguel Picasso, Sabrina Kay, Fatima Hernandez, Mr. Badonkadonk, Clayton Sonnerberg, Matthew Bailey, Chad Thurman, Evan Vernon, VI, Walter Slavnov, Carl Eads Hans, Megan Ruggiero, Jean-Claude Paquin, Caleb Priestner, Devin Miner, I'm Not Alex, Harry Evett, Neil Patterson, Maxwell, Kenneth Mundy, Dig Dog, Kane Cruz, Jay Wright, Luke's Grimm, Maiden of Madness, Matt DeJean, Andrew Pearson, Pepper Blackburn, Cage Danish, Grotesque Wombat, Oni-chan, RCNFL, Toby Harkima, Landy K. Hayes, Chad Burns-Smith, Day Snyder, Mentat Junkie, Utter Plant, Clara Bettina Berman, Major Kickass Last, To Angry Zeno, Jay, Frederick Henry, The Cthulhu Kid, Michelle Barrera, LB Jarreau, Oscar the Man 18, Chris Botkin, Josh Foti, and Twilight Sky 15. That's a long old list. Thank you very much, guys.